This is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I'm Joel Smith.
I'm Joe Baker. We're not here to be the superhero. We just want to be your sidekick and help you along in building your business, building your not-for-profit. Let's help you grow it fast and really scale.
Be sure to check us out on Facebook and visit us at superherosidekick.com. Hey, everybody. I'm Joel Smith. And with me is our guest host, Greg Gilbaugh, Dr. Greg Gilbaugh, that is. Greg, how you doing today?
We're having a great day. Glad to be with you again, Joel. Looking forward to this podcast and the topics that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, this is good. So, we were trying to think of what we wanted to talk about today. And, the idea of meetings came up. And when in the workplace, when you hear the term meeting or you hear somebody say, hey, we've got a meeting next Wednesday, sometimes people will kind of cringe. And you've probably all been in very boring meetings or meetings that seem like a waste of time or meetings that happen too often, or maybe just snooze fests. And Greg, you ever been in some pretty boring meetings?
I was just thinking, Joe, when we talked about this topic about meetings, I'm thinking through my personal Kindle business library and about books about meetings. And it's like, topics like death by meetings and meetings suck. So it's like, yeah, that tends to be an overriding theme with meetings. Absolutely. I think that I have been in a huge number of meetings that have not been good. And I have led a huge number of meetings that have not been good. I am still learning. They're essential, but if not done right, they will go bad.
Yeah, I'm with you. You think of how many years you and I have been in business and how many meetings we probably had over those years. And of course, there's going to be some really effective ones in there. And then probably the majority may not even be very effective at times. So, but let's dig into this a little bit and kind of get a better perspective on this. So really, when we talk about a meeting, we're talking about people getting together for a reason. And usually there's a purpose behind this, a purpose of clarifications, maybe setting expectations, maybe it's confrontational a bit, or maybe it's a meeting for hype or to get people jazzed about something. There's all kinds of different meetings. There's strategic meetings. So there's a lot of different kind of meetings out there, of course. And I guess one thing I would say, Greg, is that sometimes when I've noticed that meetings are not very effective, it's because maybe there just wasn't a clear purpose. Maybe the people going into the meeting didn't really understand whether it was a reflective meeting or a strategic meeting or what kind of a meeting it really was, or a problem solving meeting. And so I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I look at meetings that are essential. They're absolutely essential. And in fact, I refer to my meetings as a KPI. Many times in business, we say, well, that's a key performance indicator. How's the business going? There are certain things that you have to look at to make sure that everything is running well, like the dashboard on the car. And I refer to my meetings as a KPI, but it's specifically keep people informed. It's for communicating something, whether I need to communicate something or whether we're going to be talking or discussing about something. But it's absolutely, I think, essential. What is the purpose of the meeting? I think one of the things that I like to do, and I need to do it more frequently or else the meeting goes off track, is I need to ask myself, what has to happen during this meeting so at the end of it, I'm satisfied with what took place?
Right.
What is the purpose of the meeting? I think Patrick Lencioni, in his book, Death by Meeting, he does say that sometimes when we don't have a purpose, then everything gets thrown in and we have what he calls meeting stew.
Right.
All of a sudden, we got a little vision, we got a little communication, we're working on agendas, what's going on? I need to tell you something. And it just all gets lost because there's not a definitive purpose for why we're having this particular get together, to come away from your desk, to come away from productivity. And we're investing in it. And Yeah,
And
there's got to be a purpose.
And, you know, sometimes, Greg, the facilitator, the person that's planning the meeting or leading the meeting, you know, maybe they do have a purpose, and they really do. They have something specific that they want to do, but they don't communicate it well. And so they get into this meeting and they're kind of going down this road towards purpose. And then other ideas start popping up, and well, what about this? What about this? And they feel like they're herding cats, and everybody else is bringing their agendas to the table because you just didn't communicate it well enough. You just didn't let everybody know this is what our time is for. This is how much time we have, and this is the purpose. And, you know, kind of letting everybody know what's going on so that there's some boundaries. Oftentimes, I think in meetings, there's just no boundaries.
Exactly. You know, Joel, you have led a lot of different types of meetings, you know, in the restaurant world, working with all sorts of like either managers, maybe with co-owners, with you know, the essential staff and those kind of. Off the top of your head, what are the different types of meetings that you have to lead?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that is good, because I think a lot of people don't really think about that. They just think, hey, let's just get together and we're going to figure some stuff out. Well, so that's a good question. So in my world, I have very specific purposes for different kinds of meetings. And for instance, I'll have one-on-one meetings with all of my managers, all of my my first tier and second tier circles, in which once a month I'll sit down and I'll have a one-on-one. It's really just all about them, and it's a coaching meeting. So it's focused on them and their needs. And that's different than other types of one-on-one meetings where maybe I'm confronting a problem, or I'm maybe doing an evaluation, or maybe I'm teaching somebody something, and that's a different kind of meeting. So even within the one-on-one meetings, there's different types of meetings. Maybe my coaches that I have that work under me, my senior leaders, their one-on-ones look a little different than mine. Theirs include a sales report. Theirs include a, you know, goals sheet, a period goals sheet or quarterly goals sheet, and working through those KPIs with people. But when I meet with them for coaching, I don't talk about the KPIs. I go a different route. And then there's, of course, the smaller group meetings. Oftentimes those might be a senior leadership team, or maybe the managers, or something where it's more of a planning committee. And in which case, those meetings oftentimes are to get feedback and set kind of an agenda or a plan for the upcoming period, or the upcoming week, or the upcoming quarter. And so those are more strategic and brainstorming. Maybe you go into it a little bit more open-ended, but with specific outcomes that you want to have, but you just don't know the answers until you brainstorm through them. And then, of course, there's, you know, corrective action meetings where, and it could still be one-on-one, it could still be a small group, or it could be the large group. We have large store meetings sometimes, or we'll have, you know, a whole store get together, and we'll just address some things that need to be addressed, but we'll try to make that something where we have the people walking out of the meeting, and maybe there's a dozen or 15 people, however many employees we have in a store. The idea is to have them walking out with a better understanding of where they're at, and feeling good about their job, you know. And so sometimes it's just maybe calibration. We call these calibration or focus meetings, where we just need to kind of clear the air and kind of get everybody on the same page again, so that we're all moving in the right direction. So that's a purpose too. You know, and then we have co-op meetings with other owners, where we're talking about marketing. We're specifically talking about marketing, and we're planning on what we're doing. So we're digging out the spreadsheets, and you know, talking about finances and surveys, and you know, television ratings, and all of these different things, in which case we're really strategizing for something bigger down the road. So there's a lot of different meetings. So you really have to get clear on that up front, because if you're not, boy, you could just be off and running in the wrong direction and get nothing done.
Yeah, and with all these different types of meetings, all wanting to deal with different types of, let's say, content or objectives, looking for, you know, agendas, different people are there. There's a lot of different types of meetings. And you know, I remember reading in some books about like executives, and it's like, you know, if you don't like meetings, don't be an executive, because that's basically what your day entails. You're always meeting with people to do a bunch of different things. And I think, well, I'm not an executive, I'm a business owner. Kind of an executive, unless it's like, I'm an owner, but I'm also I'm also a producer. I'm also somehow part of the organizational rollout of this business. Okay. But if you're like an owner and it's like, I'm not actually doing any frontline production, you're in meetings to make sure that this organization runs well. And there's Joel, there's a lot of different types of meetings. What are the different ways that you use to disseminate the information? Because not all meetings need to be come to my office or the conference room and let's all get together. What are some different ways that you can disseminate information as a KPI and keep people informed?
Yeah. I think scheduling and making sure that people understand what each meeting is for based on that scheduled time. For instance, like we do weekly meetings with my management staff every Wednesday between 3 and 5. So between 3 and 4, we'll take about 20 minutes and we'll talk about the sales report and reflect on last week. And then we take about 35 to 40 minutes where we'll break off into smaller groups. These are on Zoom, smaller groups with each of our managers will be in a small group with our coaches, our senior leaders, our coaches. So they'll get some time, 35, 40 minutes every week to talk with their coach, to run questions by them, to talk about their goals and what they're working on. And so they know that time is designated for that purpose. So we don't do those things outside of that so much. Not that they can't consult their coach, but they know that that's coming. So if they have questions over the weekend or something, they know they're going to have an opportunity to address it at a certain time this following Wednesday. And then we do, that second hour then between 4 and 5, every Wednesday, we do training. We do training or some extensive planning meetings. One of those Wednesdays every month, we do leadership training. Another Wednesday of the month, we do operations training. Another Wednesday, we do period planning. We're planning the whole next period together as a big team and reflecting on last period. And so we label them ahead of time. We don't figure it out as we go. We already have it laid out on the calendar with specific purposes all the way through. And they all understand the differences. They all know who's invited to each one. And because not all the same people are invited to all the meetings. And so I think those are that's what's important. So they know, and maybe you label the meeting, the title of the meeting that's descriptive as well. So they understand that this is a general manager planning meeting. Or this is operational training meeting.
Yeah. So. Anytime you're bringing people off the playing field, so to speak, out of operations or productivity, it's going to cost you something. Meetings cost something.
Yep.
And it's like all this information that needs to be disseminated does not need to be done. Everyone come together. If it can be solved through emails, do it. Sometimes I need to just talk with someone in the hallway for 2 minutes.
Yep.
Or I need to talk with 1 or 2 people real quickly sometime today. But you don't have to always call people. Zoom has become not only something that we're all familiar with, but it's also something that we're becoming very good and very tired of. But it's still a venue that we can have really good and effective times of communication. Joel, you started to go into something that was really, really key. When you have a meeting, you got to have an agenda.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah. Well, it's like having a job and making money and spending money with no budget. If you don't know where your money's going, you don't know what's being spent on. It's the same thing with an agenda. When you have a certain amount of time, if you've got a 1 hour meeting and you've got 8 or 10 people in this meeting, you're paying them for this time. So that's time that you're investing in that hour. And so why would we want to, get 30 minutes of information, but take an hour to do it? If we're going to pay out double the amount of money for these meetings, you take, everybody's hourly wage times 10, that's an expensive meeting potentially, right? So we want to make sure that we're being efficient with our time. But the other part too is that just for clarity, so they understand that there's one, maybe two things that we really need to come away and understand from this meeting, and not get bogged down with 20 different things we need to walk away from.
Yep.
And so sometimes just having one topic and talking about that topic in detail can be something that's engraved and it's meaningful, and you can walk away without being overwhelmed, as opposed to maybe an agenda that's kind of wide open and you're talking about 20 different things, and you really get to the end of the meeting, you're like, okay, so what's the summary? And no one really knows what to walk away from. So having an agenda is really important. So, you could ask, what does the agenda need to look like? And, it's going to be different depending on your business and what you're doing, but just kind of a general template, I think, is that if you have an agenda and you have an introduction, maybe the first part, if you divide this into 3 sections, you have an introduction, and the introduction maybe gives the clear purpose of the meeting, of what you're about, maybe just a couple quick updates on any quick news that needs to be mentioned without going into a lot of detail on that. And then you get right into the body, and maybe the body has a 3-point thing that you really want to talk about. Maybe it's what's our current situation, where do we want to be, and what are the steps to get there. This is just one example, but so something very, very concise. And on my agendas, when I have agendas with my leadership teams, I put times on the agenda. So I'll have introduction 5 minutes. So I know 5 minutes, and I actually ask my office manager to give me a signal if we're going over. If I'm the one kind of leading it, just keep us on track, because we got to get through this. And I let everybody know right away. We start on time every time. And the first thing I do when we start our meeting is I thank everybody for being on time, and I tell them I really appreciate that you appreciate our time.
Yeah.
And so that's important. Start on time, go in order, have a 3-point, 3 different parts to that. And then you need to conclude it too. With the conclusion of the meeting, you need to talk about what those action points. So what does that mean? What are we going to do now? Who's responsible for what? And exactly. At what point do they need to be, when are we going to have this done by? And so it just needs to be simple and clear, but very precise. And your agenda needs to reflect that.
Yeah, exactly. The agenda reflects the heart and mind of the business owner. That, and I think the business owner is the one that needs to come up with the agenda, because if the business owner says, what, I really can't come up with the agenda, it's like, well, then you really don't know what the purpose of your meeting is.
Right. Yeah.
And you got to get really clear on it. The other thing is not to be, just an authoritative dictator, but you said something really good. We start on time and we need to end on time.
Yeah.
When we allow people to sneak in, late or whatever, and sometimes there's stuff that goes on, we understand. But when that is consistent, what it communicates is that this meeting really is not that important, and it needs to be.
Yep.
And the other thing is that, look, we're gonna end it at this point in time. Let's be on. 2 things that happened to me this week that really drove home this point. Someone had sent me an email, and it was a quote from Winston Churchill. Really good. They sent me this quote, and it says, Churchill said, if you have an important point to make, don't try to be subtle or clever. Use a pile driver, hit the point once, come back and hit it again, then hit it a 3rd time, a tremendous whack. In that, if you got a point to make, you don't have to be a jerk or come across angry, but if you got a point to make it, and then make sure it's made, and then make sure it's made, okay?
Yep.
Our meetings will take up the amount of time that we give it.
Yep.
If we have a 2-hour meeting, it'll take 2 hours.
Yep.
If we shorten it down to 30 minutes, we can get it done in 30 minutes. I was coaching a business owner, a dentist, yesterday. She had been dealing with a specific problem, and I said, okay, what if you had a year to fix this problem? And she said, well, I've already been working on it for 6 months. I said, okay, what have you been doing? She labeled a lot of things. I was really, really proud of her. So I said, okay, what if you had to solve this problem now in the next 2 weeks? And all of a sudden she goes, oh my goodness, I'd do this. I'd light a fire here. And she had about 3 or 4 things that she came away with. And I said, so what are you going to do tomorrow? Well, I'm going to start here. If you sometimes shorten it, you're going to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And the meetings, we've got 30 minutes to get this taken care of. Let's go.
Yep.
And you stop with, I call it the emotional communicative foreplay, where it's like, had to get some coffee, had to get a drink. How's your family? Okay, fine. But we've got to get this done. And it also, we're not going to take up all your time. In fact, we're going to make sure that we're going to hit these points, get it done, because we have very effective, engaging meetings, and you're important. Get your stuff in and let's go.
Yep.
So,
That's right. And, as far as timing and efficiency, there's a couple tips that I have that I like to mention too. And that is that if you let people know up front when you need to get through something, so saying something like, hey guys, if you have any questions or comments, if you could just hold them off a little bit, we'll give about 5 minutes at the end and you can ask those questions. But we really got it, for the sake of time, we got to get through this. So I need to nail this down. So that's one trick you could do, just kind of putting a lasso around that, or giving some guardrails to that open, free range talking, making sure that they understand that that's not the place, but maybe have a place for it. And the other part of that too is that even though we want to end on time, we do want to end on time. But one way that you can end on time is you can basically just say, okay, guys, we're going to wrap this up here. It's time now. We're going to go. But hey, I'm going to hang out for about another 5 minutes. If anybody wants to stick around, have anything you want to mention, that we can do that. And that's a way that we don't hold everybody hostage, through somebody else's personal issue that they need to talk through or whatever. Or if somebody needs clarification, then there's some time for that. But you're still kind of sticking within those boundaries and guardrails. So there's
Joe,
ways to contain it.
Yeah, we've covered the purpose. Meetings need to be done. You got to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to have an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're intentional about your communication. How frequently should you have meetings?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, I've seen it gone wrongly both ways, where we'll just have a meeting only if we really have to. And it's never scheduled. It's kind of like, if things are starting to go off the rails, we'll have a meeting and we'll pull everybody together and get it fixed. And it's really not on the schedule. Or every little thing that goes wrong, we need to just kind of have a meeting. Let's have a meeting. And so I can see both. And I think it goes back to the purpose. If you don't have a purpose, you don't have it all lined out, then you don't know how frequent you should have it. But the key is that meetings can get too frequent if you allow them. If you have a person that just likes to talk, and they would love to have meetings all the time if they could, but you have to have the discipline to say, you got to stick within the purpose, and you got to stick within a long-term time frame. And so asking yourself, within this quarter, does it make sense to have a meeting every week, or is that overkill? Can we do this less and get the same results? So really, the least amount of meetings but getting the same result is best. It's best. Yes. But if having less meetings is going to be too much distance between there, and you're going to forget some of those things, and it decreases the effectiveness, well, then you want to tighten it up a little bit. So I find that every couple of weeks for some types of meetings is about right. Once a quarter for other meetings is just about right. So I think you have to avoid extremes, and you have to ask yourself, does this get the long-term results
exactly
that we need?
It's when I talk to other business owners, it's like, look, this is your business. What do you need done? What kind of meetings do you want to have? Talking with a dentist that I was doing a little coaching with, he said, I read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and said that all these one of the things that these companies had in common was that they had a morning huddle. So we're going to have a morning huddle. It's like, what are you going to talk about? He goes, I don't know, but we're going to have a morning huddle. It's like, okay, I love the zeal. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, maybe morning huddles don't work for you.
Right.
You tried. Okay. But the thing is that what kind of meetings, how frequently, it's your business. Engage yourself. What works out the best for you?
Yep.
When we started having meetings, we had them more frequently, because during this time was some training, people getting used to the meetings and what is expected. And then we were able to kind of like schedule them out a little bit.
Yep.
What was once a week is now once a month, because now that is working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there are
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think there are some templates that are good guidelines for meetings. Like if you're working in a small business, having quick leadership meetings once a week can be kind of a guideline. Maybe a 30-minute meeting once a week can work. Maybe you extend that out to your next circle of people once a month. Having quarterly meetings for setting goals and objectives can be something that's good. Individual meetings can be as needed, but they probably should be scheduled as well. Maybe once a month for one-on-ones is a good guideline. But again, it could be different depending on your business and what you're doing. But I think the key is that there's a pattern. There's a pattern and a purpose. And I think that's the key. And you just have to ask yourself. One more thing too, Greg, that I was going to say too, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, but if you want to know how effective your meetings are, and you really want to know because you're afraid that maybe it's a blind spot and you just don't know, just ask your people. Ask your people, say, hey, what do you think? Are our meetings too long? Are they too short? Do you feel like we just don't get to some important things? Do you think we spend too much time on unimportant things? Do we meet too often? Is there a different way? Are we getting together and meeting when maybe just a quick conference call, where no one has to travel, that could meet the need? Or, is it better to do it in person or not, over phone, whatever it is, but ask people, ask them what they think. And if you just listen to the collective, thoughts of your people, it's going to guide you into something that at least they feel is going to be more effective. And really, this is for them.
That's right.
Yeah. So
I like to end my meetings, almost all of them, by asking this question, and they go around the room, or if it's one-on-one, what's the most beneficial or profitable thing that you got out of our time together today? And you listen to their feedback. And if it's like, oh, this was good. All right, they were listening, they were engaged. And if they go, let me think, and then they throw something out, it's like, well, that was nice, but that the meeting was not received well, then was there really an intention for it? The other thing that I have found, if you're having good meetings, is that there's another meeting that isn't happening, and that's the meeting after the meeting. The meeting where people then they leave and then they get together in the hallway and they talk about how bad things are, or they didn't understand, they didn't commit, whatever it was. When those go on, you need to have better meetings.
Yeah.
There's not one of us that hasn't had that or still have that, in our meetings. So,
yeah, that's right. We've all had it. Having bad meetings is easy. That's easy. All you got to do is just get people together and then spew. Just say whatever you feel, and that's a really bad recipe for a meeting. There's a lot of meetings that turn into, here's what you're all doing wrong, and here's what I expect you to do going forward. And those are horrible.
No, because whenever 2 or 3 are gathered together, there will be conflict and differing opinions.
Yeah.
Okay, that's reality. Meetings are essential, and because they're essential, they need to be scheduled so people know that they're important, and then you got to make them important.
Yep.
Yep. If they're not accomplishing something, get rid of them. If they are accomplishing something, make sure that you have them and make them better. Falls on the shoulder of you as the business owner, and make your business into something that can be so much better because you're making the best out of meetings.
Yep, that's right. So, all right. Hey, Greg, I think we're at the end of our time, but I appreciate your wisdom, and this is a fun topic. I like this.
Yeah, I love, let's have a meeting about this.
Yeah, no doubt. So, hey, everybody, we'd love it if you could give us some feedback and tell us what you think about this topic, and log in to Superhero Sidekick as well, and check us out there. And we'll just see you on the next episode. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.